Welcome back. Somehow the Brady family home on Clinton Avenue was sealed off from the rest of the world. Back in the late 60s and early 70s, everything was going crazy. The Vietnam War was tearing America apart, students were rioting, revolution was in the air, along with marijuana, the sounds of Hendrix, Woodstock and the Doors. Even Stayed All Australia was letting its hair down. These were turbulent times. Everybody was tuning in, turning on and dropping out. Everybody except the Brady Bunch.
You never see a script in the Bradys that deals with, no one even mentions the Vietnam War, or a racial conflict, or the economy, or the oil slump, all the big things that were happening in the world at the time.
In the tiny little universe of the Brady family, there was no Vietnam, there was no JFK, there was no moon landing, there was nothing complicated, there was nothing dramatic. The universe didn't matter. All that mattered was, was their little house in their little suburb.
When the Brady Bunch premiered in America in 1969, critics had a field day, regularly blasting the sitcom for its sickly sweet storylines. But the show was one of the first on television to feature a family made up of kids from different marriages. Executive producer Sherwood Schwartz first came up with the idea after reading a story in the Los Angeles Times in 1965. According to the article, nearly 1/3 of all American families included one or more children from a previous marriage. The statistics amazed Schwartz, who was part of a traditional family, with Mrs. Schwartz and the 4 little Schwartzes.
It was an immediate show in my head. Immediate. I mean, my fear was that every writer would look at that little article and realize that a sociological phenomenon was occurring in the United States.
Schwartz was a bit of a sitcom guru. He started writing for Bob Hope in 1939. He later worked with such comedy legends as Ozzie and Harriet Nelson and Red Skelton. Schwartz hit pay dirt in 1963 when he created Gilligan's Island. But turning his blended family concept into a 30-minute sitcom was pretty tricky. John Rich, who directed Gilligan's Island, reckoned Sherwood was the man for the job.
His approach is pure. He's a wonderful innocent in that sense, because he feels this way about family values and so on, and I think it touches a nerve in the country.
A few months after reading the newspaper article, Schwartz wrote a pilot episode about the marriage of a widower with 3 boys and a divorcee with 3 girls. Schwartz titled the script Yours and Mine. All 3 US TV networks were interested. NBC wanted to cut the scene where the kids go along on the parents' honeymoon. CBS didn't want Mike and Carol to get married at all. And ABC wanted the show stretched from 30 minutes to 2 hours. Schwartz politely told them all where to go. Everything changed when a movie with a similar idea and name hit the big screen.
I'm glad I have 10 children.
And I'm glad I have my 8.
And I'm glad I'm careful.
People kept staring as if they thought we were crazy.
They didn't get any argument from me.
Yours, Mine and Ours was a huge critical and box office success. And surprise, surprise, the networks had a change of heart.
The movie had done my pilot for me. So ABC called me and said, hey, okay, we'll do it your way.
ABC wanted to change the title of the sitcom from Yours and Mine, so audiences wouldn't confuse the television show with the movie. They tried The Brady Gang, The Brady Pack, and even The Brady Bundle, but finally settled on, well, you know what. Choosing a title was easy compared to what was to come. The script called for 9 principal actors, including a husband and wife, their 6 kids, and a housekeeper. Casting took an exhausting 3 months. The kids had first go. More than 1,000 boys and girls showed up for the open audition in Los Angeles in the summer of 1968. Barry Williams and Eve Plum were among the many desperates.
I remember going on what was known as a cattle call. I don't know if they still have them. They essentially had a sound stage, and they had, just reams and tons of children, grouped into age groups and hair color groups. Blondes over here, reds over here, redheads, girls and boys of both hair color.
They had kept everyone out on the street, and then they would allow a certain number of people into the office, and finally you whittled your way into meeting Sherwood Schwartz.
The handful of kids who did get asked back had to audition several times, and their parents were subjected to lengthy interviews. Schwartz's only easy decision involved filling the part of the youngest daughter, Cindy. He was instantly smitten with a blonde, blue-eyed little girl in pigtails named Susan Olsen.
She said, I was on episode of Gunsmoke. I said, how did that work out? And she said, well, I was on this horse, and he got frightened by a snake, and I didn't have to go any further.
I did know that I was the first one picked because I have a mother who always told me everything she knew. She always figured I was grown up enough to handle any information. And she had heard from my agent that I had the part.
Schwartz decided the audience would have an easier time figuring out who was who if the boys had the same colour hair as their father and the girls the same as their mother. Comedy actress Joyce Bulifant was cast as the mother, Carol Brady.
I went in to read, and then they said, "You're Mrs. Brady, and we'll cast the children according to you." So I went in with the children, and they would put them next to me to see if the girls looked like me, which they did. and then I interviewed with the different men.
Play opposite Bulifant, Schwartz wanted a brown-haired actor for the part of Mike Brady. His choice was a little-known actor by the name of Gene Hackman. Douglas S. Kramer was the head of television production at Paramount, where the pilot was shot. Kramer preferred an up-and-coming leading man called Robert Reed. Reed had earned praise several years earlier for his portrayal of a young lawyer on the legal drama The Defenders.
I had tested Bob Reed for Barefoot in the Park. It was a half-hour pilot that we were shooting at that point, based on the successful movie. And I showed Sherwood Bob's test, and he said, "That's not what I'm looking for."
But Reed was exactly what Kramer was looking for, so he convinced the actor to meet with Schwartz.
Sherwood gave me the plot of it, and it sounded wonderful. He put it together with statistics of broken families and so forth. He said, it's going to be comedic, but not, you know, it's going to be lifelike. Well, then I got the script of it, and it was one gag line to another. And I thought, this is, well, I don't think this has much of a chance, but they tell me I can either do this or Mission Impossible, do a segment. So anyway, I did this.
Reed was offered the role, and despite strong reservations, he accepted. With the lead actors in place, Schwartz made his final choices for the kids. 12-year-old Maureen McCormack was cast as the pretty older daughter, Marcia. 9-year-old Eve Plum, who was called back because of her resemblance to Joyce Bulifant, was selected as the emotional middle child, Jan. And 7-year-old Susan Olsen was the innocent youngest daughter, Cindy. The boys' parts went to 14-year-old Barry Williams as the hip older son, Greg. 10-year-old Christopher Knight was cast as the scheming middle child, Peter. And freckle-faced Mike Lookingland, who was 7, played the shy youngest son, Bobby.
I got the job because my hair color was right, and I looked like I could be, you know, Robert Reed's son. And it wasn't a talent audition. It was essentially a look audition. I mean, and that's about what I had to offer back then, too, because I wasn't really much of an actor.
Casting was completed when veteran actress Monty Margetts was selected for the part of the housekeeper, Alice. But just 3 days before the pilot was to be shot, an unforeseen crisis occurred. Studio execs had been interested in auditioning a well-known Broadway actress called Florence Henderson for the role of Carol Brady. But Henderson's schedule made her unavailable until long after everyone else had read for the part.
I got a call from my agent saying they want you to come down to Paramount and meet John Rich and Doug Kramer and Sherwood Schwartz and all these people I had never heard of. And I said, why? And he said, for a new TV series. And I said, I don't want to do a TV series. I live in New York City.
Henderson eventually changed her mind, and at the last minute, Schwartz and the studio execs decided to let her audition. Everyone was so impressed that Florence was immediately offered the part, and that's why we've never heard of Joyce Bulifant.
I called her up and I said I had to talk to her about something, and she says, fine, come over. So I went over and we talked, and I said, there's been a change. Florence Henderson, who was scheduled to test, wasn't available. She has come out, and she's very good.
To think that you've got the lead in a series and then you don't have it, it's tough.
That was not the last change. Henderson wasn't as funny as Bulifant, so Monty Margetts was replaced by funny lady Ann B. Davis, who Schwartz felt could supply the necessary comic relief. Davis had won 2 Emmys for the role of Schultzie on the popular 1950s sitcom The Bob Cummings Show.
Seems a shame to just let it go to waste after we paid the money and everything. And I let it go to waste.
Davis was performing at a nightclub in Seattle when she was summoned to the Brady Bunch set.
They said, you're on, Ann. We're going to buy you out of your last week in the nightclub and come down and shoot the pilot. So I didn't know all that was going on. I just knew it happened very fast and it sounded pretty good to me.
With the show's first crisis resolved and casting finalised, shooting of the pilot got underway in September 1968, more than 3 years after Sherwood Schwartz first pitched his original idea. But at least one cast member bet the Brady Bunch would be short-lived.
I thought to myself, no one will ever see it again. But they can't take this. We didn't do anything worth doing. I wouldn't have given it a nickel's chance.
After the break, Mike Brady threatens to walk out on his family. If the 70s was the decade style forgot, then the Brady Bunch were the first ones to lose their memory. Even though the show kicked off in 1969, its fashion, language and spirit were definitely 70s. And for a generation of impressionable Aussie youngsters, if the Bradys did it, said it or wore it, then you did too.
Well, obviously they've had absolutely no influence on my sense of clothing and style. Not. And then, of course, there's Carol. This hairdo is very much my tribute. My new hairdo, it's a tribute to Carol Brady.
I think fashion-wise, they had a great influence on me. I mean, Greg's wacky sense of fashion when he went into the hippie thing, and when they got the record contract, that was wild. Their jumpsuits was burned into my memory.
I love the way they dressed for the time. I thought they dressed fantastic. Now, I'm wearing a shirt today because I love the adventure they had at Hawaii. Greg found this bad luck, tiki thing, and they were all wearing these fantastic shirts.
Hordes of young viewers tuned in every Friday night to see what the Bradys were wearing and hear what they were saying.
They always wanted us to say groovy, and we were just completely embarrassed to say that. Because even though it wasn't a thing to say, it was being made to say, it was sort of, putting too fine a point on it.
I'm sorry, Alfie, but I just can't make it today. I promise I'll be there tomorrow.
With the payment?
Yes.
We accept cash, you know.
Groovy. It's a date. Bye. Hey, Marcia, do you want to come listen to my new record album with me? It's really far out. I'm not in the mood for enjoying myself.
I didn't think that we were dressed cool. And there was actually some concern about not dressing us too timely. I don't know. That was the excuse they gave us. I said, why can't we wear tank shirts? And they said, because, this show will probably go into syndication and those won't be in style anymore.
As silly as the clothes seemed, some thought the episodes were even sillier. But in fact, many plots were taken directly from the creator's family life. Schwartz's daughter, Hope, was an especially good source of ideas.
Things would happen at school and I would come home and share the day's news, and then it would end up as a storyline, in an episode. Mike Brady would come in and say pumpkin and talk like that, and I remembered like 3 weeks before my dad doing that and thinking, I don't want my life out there. I mean, this is my life, and that was kind of surreal.
Schwartz's son Lloyd worked on the show as a producer. He often found himself defending his father.
One of the criticisms of the show was levied is, that's not real life. Well, it was my real life, and so I have a tough time with that criticism because that's the way my parents would talk to me. We didn't have coming from different families, but we had a housekeeper and that kind of thing, and we related that same way.
Let's go, gang! Girls, Marcia, Peter, Bobby.
See that? Bobby's not limping a bit.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm sure you got a point. I'm afraid Bobby's got another kind of a sprain.
The network committed to a full season, ordering 11 more episodes of The Brady Bunch in the winter of 1969. That was good news to the cast, who had quickly grown fond of each other.
Well, the great thing about our show, and it sounds really schmarmy and sweet and cute, but it's absolutely true. We all got along really well, to the point where guest stars would come on the set, and the set was so happy and nice that they wouldn't want to leave.
We did have a good time doing it, and that was maybe the nicest part of it. It was a great environment to go to work.